So welcome to the Holy Grail. How to get the best out of influencers. Over the next half an hour or so, we'll be discussing exactly what it takes to find the right influencers, get them aboard, and most importantly, how to get the best results. So I'm going to start with you, Benedikt, just as a slight intro to influencer marketing. What do you think about when you're looking to do that?
Looking to do influencer marketing.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That depends a lot on the game. Like what we've learned in the last year is actually that influencer marketing needs to be really, really, really individual. Like every game is different, every influencer is different. So that's what makes it hard to answer your question, because you need to look at the specific case and how to exactly implement that case for influencer marketing and for influence itself, which pretty much is the answer, I guess.
Okay. You had your chance, Rich. Okay.
Hello. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a base understanding of what influencer marketing is, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So thinking about what influencers want, so I want to turn to Turps as the resident influencer and just talk us through like what you want from a pitch initially.
I think whenever we're working with brands, it's obviously we want to know what the product is ultimately, and how well it fits with our content and our audience, and really I guess the objectives of that brand as well. Is there a particular thing they're trying to raise awareness of? What opportunities are there for us to have? How much freedom will we have in that? Just to help us make the decision in terms of whether or not we want to do it. That sort of process is that's the best thing to allow us to kind of crack on with a pitch and a campaign.
Okay, so you represent the Oxcast, which is obviously a huge collective of creators all doing different things and working with different companies. How do you decide which brands are right for your particular company?
All of our channels are their own companies and partners and stuff, so we allow them to make their own decisions, and it's the same with all the content they make. That's how this whole ecosystem has kind of existed, is it's authentic personal content. Gaming content, if you go onto the BBC right now, you won't see any. If you go on to Channel 4, you occasionally see one and then it dies again. The reality is that it is a niche piece of content. It doesn't work on linear TV. It works really well online, and there's millions of people doing it. And yet we have managed to find an audience with our particular way of doing it. And if we stray away from our authenticity and our style and the reason why we're doing it, we potentially lose that audience. So whenever we're kind of working with brands and doing stuff, and any of our partners are working with brands, we have to trust them to make the right decision about their authenticity and their audience, because we don't want to lose that. There's no long-term gain for anything like that.
Sure. Just as a segue from that, is there anything that would put you off working with a particular brand or company? Anything about their approach or
it's always tricky. Obviously, you'd like to think that people who've elected to work with you kind of understand who and what you are and the content you make. That's a real aspiration. It's not always the case. Certainly, if the brand is very prescript and very controlling, often that's not going to work well. They should go and try and buy some display advertising somewhere. What we're creating is the messaging through the filter of us. Again, our audiences have come to us because they like the way and our view of the world, the lens we view it through, and so we often have an idea as to how we would shape that marketing message to better suit our style, our content, and it to come across authentic, and it should be authentic. So if a brand seems like it's going to be too controlling, as kind of weird as that sounds, but if it is going to be that they basically want us to be a mouthpiece for them, then normally that's not something, at least personally, that I would want to do. I'm always looking for great partners to work with that kind of allow us to achieve cool things. So that wish fulfillment is what we always aim for with any of our branded things. If we've got a big budget, let's spend it on the content. Let's create the best video we can. That works well for the brand, and that works well for us, works well for our audience. It's that kind of win triangle. It's not a pyramid scheme, which I was excited when. Did anyone see the triangle before? I was really disappointed disappointed when that didn't turn out to be a pyramid scheme. But anyway, that's fine. It's in the public domain, so you can do what you want with it, guys. There's no law.
So,
it's fine.
A
Do what you
pyramid
want.
with no scheme. Okay, so thinking about approaching influencers, how do you find the right one for the job?
Sure. Well, it's the same sort of things, really. So it's the most important thing is matching the audience. So making sure we understand what the client wants, and that usually is the messaging, but really it's about what audience they want to reach, and then making sure those two things will match with what the influencer can bring in terms of audience, and then it's kind of point of view in terms of what the client wants, how they want their message to be brought across. Because, as Turps was saying, the most important thing is making sure that the content that gets made feels authentic, and our focus is always on how can we help them create great content, because that's what they want, that's what the audience is going to want and engage with. So the matching part of it, there's plenty of fairly straightforward ways you can. It's been commoditized, the finding of the influencers, and that's the easy bit in terms of just finding a list of names who will vaguely match your brand. Then it's doing due diligence on all of those and making sure the type of content, the messages are going to fit well on that channel and for those audiences, and they won't be rejected.
Okay, so you found the right influencer that you want to work with. How do you pitch to them that you want to do that? How do you get their attention, essentially?
Okay. Generally, if we don't know them already, and we know lots of people already, generally it's as simple as messaging them via email or social. Do you mean the physical way of contacting them, or what you say? Email or social. That tend to be the ways we reach out to people.
Okay, so thinking about different creative disciplines. In this case, the Yogscast do a lot of game stuff. Would you consider working with brands that are kind of outside of that remit? There's food and drink, there's movies and things like that. Do you just exclusively want pitches from developers or companies related to games, or would you work outside that remit?
I mean, we as an agency, as Fourth Floor, we work across lots and lots of different sectors, not just in games, and we work with lots of creators, not just in games. But for the Yogscast creators, who we obviously work very closely with, we're actually possibly more interested in people outside of games, where the focus isn't on converting a gamer to download a mobile game, for instance. It's much more about build a partnership to create some great content, and that brand can have their brand story around some great content that isn't necessarily just about that specific thing.
Okay. No. Any more?
I mean, what I can add to that is pretty much goes in both ways. So we actually focus completely on working with gaming brands, but what we're doing is we're working less and less with gaming influencers. Yeah. So the same principle applies to the other side, that you have to see like what kind of similar audiences, as you said, you can reach. Because not necessarily, especially when it comes to mobile games, like literally everyone is playing games on mobile, and not necessarily only the hardcore gamers who watch, for example, channels like the Yogscast will be interested in mobile gaming, but there are lots of casual games out there that you can actually promote very well on non-gaming channels.
I can join on this one as well, actually. So I have a great big bugbear with people talking about how many millions and billions of gamers there are. It's like saying, how many people in here like music? Do you all like music? Oh, we're all music fans, aren't we? I could put on some music now and I would love it. Well, you'd all love it. It'd be Huey Lewis in the News. But everyone's got different tastes, and I feel like people approach, gaming and gamers, and it's like, millions and millions and billions of people play mobile games. They're not gamers. They're not gamers, not in this traditional sense. And so to reach them, you shouldn't necessarily be going down that core gamer route. You know, just because you have a game doesn't mean you need to speak to people who exclusively play games. Often those people don't really care about mobile games in the same way that I don't know what Taylor Swift has sung recently. I don't. I think it's just one of those things to bear in mind with a lot of different products. Equally, you know, just because we create gaming content doesn't mean that's all we can talk about and create content around. Ultimately, we're not journalists, we're entertainers. We're looking to create entertainment around anything that we enjoy. We happen to enjoy particular games, and that's how we've grown, but we also like, you know, eating donuts. And that's it. But, you know, some people are vastly varied in their interests, and, you know, influencers, you know, hopefully they've kind of have people gravitate towards them because they have similar interests. So it is a very effective way to reach people. Sorry, that's my rant. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. There we go.
All right, so moving forward onto putting together campaigns with influencers. What is the very first thing that you should do when setting up a campaign?
Obviously, like what we've talked about, setting a target audience, like setting a size for the campaign, and obviously timing. You need lots of time to prepare for a campaign. Right? So we have, maybe I can rant right now, we have so many clients that come to us, hey, we want an influencer campaign like going live in 2 days. Well, sorry, that won't happen. You need realistic expectations, you need to know which timing, like influencers need to take a look at the game, need to play it, need to take time to prepare the content, etc., etc. So you need lots of time to prepare for the campaign, and ideally to time to discuss with us what kind of strategies we would be doing, where we could find the right influencers, etc., etc. So, yeah, be prepared. Influencer marketing is not like a Facebook ad where you can go, hey, like I'm going to start this now, I'm going to flip the switch, then I'm going to flip the switch off, right? So it's different, and many, especially in performance marketing, don't like appreciate that influencer marketing is a very unique way to reach the audience that has many, many advantages, but definitely also needs to be treated accordingly.
Yes, couldn't agree more, really. It's not performance marketing, and people who try and squeeze it down the idea of it just being performance marketing and what's the cost per install as the main goal that you're going for tends to end with a terrible campaign that doesn't work very well, because it's just misunderstanding where influencer marketing sits as a marketing channel. There was a very good talk earlier by Matchmade, and she said, I forget her name, but number one thing is start with a goal, understand your objective in mind, and that is very much where the marketeer or the community manager or the PR person, whoever runs the campaign, needs to understand what outcomes they're after, you know, what does success look like for them, and then you can build a campaign around that. But if their outcomes they want is just the tiniest CPI they can get, then this is almost definitely the wrong channel for them.
Absolutely. Thinking about creative control, it can be tempting for a lot of brands to just want to really hold the reins with a creator and just say, you know, this is what you're doing, this is what you're supposed to say, you know, we expect this amount from you. We're not realizing that every campaign is different and every creator is different. So how much creative control should a brand really have over a creator?
Very little, really. The whole point is that they're paying for the influence of that creator over their audience, and that is just removed if the content is not in the style that the audience wants, that they've come in for. So yeah, it's one of those things that they're paying for something and then they're hurting it themselves. You know, it's just the wrong way around.
Yeah, I mean, a certain aspect of control can be asserted because what brands know is kind of what is, for example, cool about the game. You have to keep in mind that probably the influencer, when being contacted by the brand, will be seeing the game for the first time, most likely. So definitely brands, or we as an agency, know how to best shed a light on this game. Specifically, right? So we've played the game, we know which levels are, for example, especially cool, especially flashy, but in the end, the influencer will always know best what works best for the fans, because they have the connections to the audience, they know those people, so they should always have the last word on this.
Okay. a segue from that, how does making sponsored video content differ from buying just traditional ad space?
You can't block it. That's the first one. You can if it's the message. So, I mean, firstly, is what you're paying for is like the book club. You know, if Richard and Judy say it's a good book, I'm going to buy it. You know, I trust in them. I trust them, and so I'm buying into that trust and that bond that we've built over many books. I've never read any books, guys. But the idea is that, you know, display advertising is, you know, you're just shouting out into the void about what you think is great. But if a friend of mine that I talk to for anywhere from 20 minutes to 6 hours a day, only they talk to me constantly, and I can't talk to them because they're just a video or a live stream. But if they say something to me and they're saying that this is good, and they authentically believe that, because I know them, I can tell if they're just saying it, then that is super effective. That's really, really powerful and really useful. There you go. Sweet.
All right.
A star.
Moving on to getting results from a campaign, is there a right way to predict a certain amount of user engagement from a certain creator?
Yeah, I mean, it's doing your homework really, and understanding what you would expect as their averages around views and watch time and engagements, and looking at not just their usual videos, but when they've done branded videos. It's also not falling into the trap of okay, this creator, say on YouTube, gets 700,000 views for all their videos, so we'll get them to make a dedicated video, but those 700,000 views come because they're playing Fortnite, and your dedicated video is on a mobile game, and then being surprised when it gets 50,000 views. You know, it's that sort of thing of understanding the channel and the audience, not just looking at some top line subs, average monthly views, average engagements, that kind of thing, and digging deeper on that kind of content.
Okay. You offer any more? No. Okay. Moving on from that, what's the best way to calculate return on investment on a video or a piece of content?
Well, I think it has to be part of your wider campaign mix. I think it's what I find. What often happens when people say it hasn't worked for them is they'll pick one or two influencers and they'll have a very small budget, and then they'll be surprised when it doesn't happen. Coming back to the idea, it's not performance marketing. It's not pour money in and you know what results you're going to get out of it. If that's the kind of marketing you need to be using other platforms. It should be part of your marketing mix. Probably a large part, and it should be the headline part of it, and then use a lot of that content for the rest of your marketing. But again, it comes down to the start point of what were your goals. You should be tracking everything you possibly can track, and there's lots of ways to track things. But you've also got to remember that most people aren't following links in descriptions of YouTube videos, even people who then go on to take that action. When we've tested this, it's about 10% of the people who will take an action will bother to click that link in the description. And you can make it go higher and lower by doing vocal call-outs instead of overlays, by the way you talk to the audience around partnering with the brand. You can make that the amount of people that click go higher. But you've also got to remember that this has to be an awareness piece as well, and that lots of people will need to be have that brand put to them, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times before they'll make the purchase. And you've got to remember that when you're evaluating the campaigns.
I think what's really important in this regard is that you actually try always to create an engagement with the followers and with the fans of the influencer. That should always be a main goal, and it's a great way to actually measure the return on investment way better than, for example, the tracking link, which we all know isn't clicked that much really. So you can't just base the success of the campaign right for the clicks on the tracking link. So what we always try to do is we get a hook inside the game that we want to promote. For example, that an influencer will create clans inside the game where the fans can join them, and then you can see like how they're engaged. Then we have clan wars between the influencers. That's pretty much for standard YouTube video, but you can also do campaigns on other social media like Instagram, where you provide contests that the influencers say the fans can do, like have them like some creative arts, drawing, stuff that then can be again used by the game's creator to expand their gaming space. And that's really where you can see like many of the engaged fans coming in from influencer marketing.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're moving into an era now where there's less sort of just, influence marketing isn't really a one-time thing. You don't just pay somebody to do a video and then never return to them again. A lot of influencers are partnering with companies to do, repeat promotion with the same thing or the same game or whatever. How would a brand keep a creator coming back and actively wanting to do that?
I mean, that's a general problem because, again, brands are always looking for low CPIs. Like that's always the big goal out there. And obviously, if an influencer will work with a brand for a longer time, that's more of sort of re-engagement campaign, right? We will get the users back into the game, get the fans back, and you won't see that cheap CPIs as you might have or might not have seen when an influencer does the first content piece on a certain game. But coming back to the initial question, I forgot where I was going.
What keeps them coming back?
From my perspective, there's brands that create good products, and there's brands that create good products that convey really well to audiences, and of that there's an even smaller subset which are ones I like, and sometimes some of those also want to pay me, and that's what we call the dream. And once you've got the dream and it's working and it's winning for everyone, then that's a no-brainer. And trying to create those situations, it can happen if that original targeting and pairing works up front. If you have the right person with the right game, it will naturally just make sense to return to that if it's always performing well. But as with all things, there will be a time when everyone in that audience kind of knows that, and there just comes a time when that has to end. But certainly, I mean, for certain brands we work with, stuff like, for example, like Blizzard, we've worked with Blizzard now for 7 years, and it's across a variety of different products, but we always know those products are good. They always work really well. We're authentically massive fans of them. But if they've got budgets, we can create bigger, noisier products, promotions for them, and it seems to always work for everyone, and so that's just good. I think when the products are good, it's just infinitely easier, and obviously that's the easiest thing in the world for me to say is like, just make a really good game, and then that's, they've got no problems. But I mean, those sorts of scenarios can be really useful.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways to approach it, and it depends on what the needs are. So I think for your classic sponsorship, where you tie yourself to the brand, and that's going to run across a lot of your content, whether that's just a logo or shout outs or you go to events with them. That can be a really good partnership between an influencer and a brand. That tends to be, or it works best as something that's a high ticket purchase, that is not something someone's going to click on something and buy. So expensive, in our world, expensive computer rigs, that kind of stuff. But otherwise, outside of that, it's cars and those sorts of things that are not very quick buys. When it's a game, a launch game, and someone's just going to buy it, and when they've bought it, that's the end of it, then those sorts of partnerships don't really work so well. They're the sort of partnerships that should be fostered really not through a paid influencer campaign, but through a community team that has really great links with influencers and gives them, and just builds that rapport with them. But there are also lots of games that will have new updates that you want people to buy. So that's where building a relationship with someone who will then come back and reactivate an audience makes a lot of sense as well.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I've run out of prompts. I'm not going to lie. So I want to move back to what you said about working with Blizzards and obviously working with companies that you're big into. What is can you run us through one of like the biggest campaigns that you've done and why it was so good?
Yeah, I guess so. I think one of the more recent ones we did with Blizzard was around World of Warcraft, and we partnered up with Sorted Food. So they're a fantastic group of food YouTubers. They make amazing content where they're chefs and just passionate guys around food. And the gist of that video was we taught them how to play World of Warcraft, and then they went away and baked things from the game in real life that we then ate and judged, because obviously we played this game for 10 years, so I know what the boar ribs should taste like. It's just intrinsic, and so for us that worked really well. It was great for a lot of audiences out there. It was kind of what we always aim for with collaborations, where you get a bit of a kind of Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it's really cool when suddenly Spider-Man's there and so is Iron Man, and they're in the same space. It's crazy because I watch him over there, I watch him there, and now they're in the same space. So those sorts of kind of partnerships can work really well. But again, it kind of adds a further kind of challenge to the marketing guys in trying to find not only suitable people for the products, but then suitable people for each other in terms of collaborating and creating content. But for something like that then involved us having 6 or 7 people involved on the Yogscast side, 4 or 5 on the Sorted Food side. That was a big video on our channel, big video on their channel, a lot of social along the side. And it's one of those things where, truth be told, no one from Blizzard's in the room, we would have done that if we weren't paid. Those are always the best ones. And on some of the more ambitious videos, pretty much all that we've got paid has gone into the video, but that's okay, that's good, that's really fun for us. We've done promotional stuff for like World War II games where we've had a tank and we've driven around in a Sherman tank. Like, who doesn't want to do that? That's amazing. So I think it's always a question of the content with anything we make. We're always trying to entertain an audience and hopefully grow an audience. And so anything we make, if it's going to kind of push people away, that's probably not a good video to make, and that's not meaning that anyone's winning at that point. So if we can use a brand's budget to create something that helps grow us, that's then again that win-win-win.
Okay, can I put the same question to you, Benedikt? What's a particularly impressive campaign that you've done, and explain why it was good?
I think my favorite campaign that we've done so far was actually with Dan and Phil Games. So the UK YouTuber, we worked with them for Battle Cats. So the publisher gave us the opportunity. Battle Cats is a mobile game where you have like some cool cat characters fighting against like different enemies, and there are like lots of crazy characters where you have like the ninja cat, big leg cat, and whatever. And we had the opportunity for them to design a new cat for the game that was actually then implemented. So we had a contest on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, for all the fans of the film game. So they did a YouTube video where they played the game and started this contest and said to their followers that they should submit their content ideas for a new battle cat for the game, and like we had a huge resonance on social media. Like several thousand cats were created and were submitted to us, and they actually picked a really cool cat as a winner, and that cat is by now in the game, is playable, and has been used. So that was, I think. Okay,
wow. Do you want to add anything, Rich?
I can do my favourite too. Well, it's probably another Yogscast one where we brought the Yogs guys together with the Game Grumps, and then we recreated Great British Bake Off with them challenging each other at that.
The actual gazebo.
We did get the actual gazebo, and and chaos ensued rather than amazing baking, obviously. So that was a lot of fun, and although the branding for the game, I mean, it was for Jurassic World Evolution, nothing to do with cooking, but it led to a huge amount of awareness of people who would never have clicked on anything to do with that game before. But also those videos were great. So they are, last year, they're in the top 10 of both of those channels' most viewed videos of the year. And when you can get that magic mix of it's branded content, but it's amazing content that the audience loves, that's when this stuff really starts to work.
Okay, thank you. That's perfect. So just to round up, what is one piece of advice that you would give to everyone left in the room to sort of up their influencer marketing game and how to treat influencers the way that they should be treated?
I would say kind of either do your research or work with someone who does research. The people who've been burnt through previous attempts at influencer marketing, it's been because they've done it wrong, where they've gone with a big headline number that means nothing, either subscribers or views or anything like that. It's all about relevance. You need to properly understand what it is you have, what it is they have, and whether or not those two things will achieve the goal you want. So if you can define those things, your budget then will define how many of those people you can work with. But truth be told, just figure out what it is you have and what it is they have. There you go.
I guess my main advice would be to take it easy. Influencer marketing is a people's business. You have to see like influencers are people, their fans are people. You're not dealing with machines. Sometimes delays happen, sometimes hiccups happen, and don't, as already was mentioned, don't make the influencers do machine stuff. Like, don't say exactly you should say that, but let influencer campaigns often take a natural flow. If like the content creator gets creative, and then you should stick to that and not say, okay, but we need the timing exactly right there, and we need you to say exactly that, but rather take it easy, let the campaign flow, let the influencer do the stuff, and then we're all good.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. I mean, I think set out to make great content is just the best way to go about it.
Okay. That is everything I've got time for. Has anyone got any questions for these gents? I've got the mic, so I will do the running.
Thanks. You guys have spoken a lot about relevance, the right audience. How do you know what your audience is like, and what do you know, or how do you know that about the influencers and match those?
We obviously have a lot of analytics both on Twitch and YouTube, which will tell us kind of audience demographics, breakdown, locations, genders, all of those kind of different elements. But I think, truth be told, they are reflections of the influencer. If the influencer is very sweary, they're probably quite okay with sweary stuff. If the influencer is very much into memes and meme reviews and stuff like that, they probably find that sort of content interesting as well. So really, it's knowing kind of if your product is a certain thing, be it a mobile game that is competitive or social, is trying to figure out who out there is into competitive social mobile games and what sort of person is that, and then trying to narrow that down into the actual influencers that are out there. And it can be a very arduous task if you're not yourself consuming that sort of content, but that's where working with an agency that already knows a lot of those things, or is already doing those things, or knows how to do those things, can save you a lot of time and effort, or just ensure you have a better hit rate when you actually get around to kind of pressing the button. Yeah, there you go.
So it sounds like you kind of just have to manually do it and look at demographics.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. There's no API call that really kind of shouts about who and what someone is.
Okay, we should talk later.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay.
Hey, so if you're not a big company with this marketing department and all this kind of thing, and you're just a bunch of guys who made a fun game, and let's say like we thought, oh, I bet the guys on Hatfilm would actually have a great time, what would be the best way to contact them? Do they check their emails?
I think it's just hatfilms@yogscast.com. That hits all three. By all means, like I think a few people have asked, like, do influencers only do stuff that they're paid for?
And that's what everyone talks about.
Yeah, like no. It's only the thing is if If I make let's say a Minecraft video, I know my audience will watch that. I know they will like that. That's good business. If you come to me and say, hey, do you want to stop doing your good business and do my thing? I'm like, well, no. Like, I'll tell you what, how much do you make? I will cover your loss. So if you just do that, it's a win-win, everyone's okay. Even then, I don't know, it's probably going to hurt my momentum because everyone else out here is still doing Fortnite and Minecraft, and why? And I think people, once they get around the idea that, you know, to disrupt the machine that is, say, Fortnite, you know, you've got all these people out there getting all these views and impressions and revenue from doing something. Even then, it's about making good games, and that way, then yes, you don't have to pay. Or if you've got a game you know people are going to love. So like with Hat Films, if you had currently they're on a big, they call it family games, but like Uno and Monopoly and stuff like that. You know, if you had an Uno game.
So we've got a family-based game. It's called BFF or Die.
Okay.
So it's all about togetherness.
Exactly. That sort of stuff, like that, kind of with a bit of kind of Cards Against Humanity or a bit of Jackbox kind of fun. Those sorts of things. If that makes good content, that's great. Okay. Even then, it sometimes is a risk. Yeah. And so sometimes they'll look at it and be like, yeah, it's great, but we should probably just do another Uno one.
Do you think they would kill? So, like, I don't know if you know Matt and Louise who do the Logitech videos. So they did a video, and somehow it's become the most popular game on their channel with like 800,000 views. Do you think other people like the Hat Film guys or whoever would think, oh, cool, if I point that out, would they think that's a good thing, or should I not mention it?
Sometimes, no. I mean, it doesn't hurt to say it. It just depends on how relevant or actually, you know, impactful it would be on their channels to their audiences. Because they're often different. However, YouTubers and Twitch streamers, they follow trends. Right. So if they're seeing like, hey, all these guys are getting all these views doing this thing, we could do that. That would be fun. I think it doesn't hurt to highlight that similar guys to you did this, and they saw really great views and their audiences loved it. So check it out, see if it's something that works for you, and then that's where sometimes to just give them the extra nudge. You know, paid content can help, and often it doesn't mean that people will only ever play that game from there on in if they're paid. If it works for them, they're going to keep playing it.
Cool.
I do think that when you're setting out on this, that a lot of people set out with the idea of can I get a load of channels to play my game and organically, and if they don't, then maybe I'll pay them. And I think that is the wrong mindset to set out on influencer marketing path with. I think that they are different strategies that you should have. There should be channels that you think your game is perfect for, and you should work very hard to build a relationship and get them to play your game, and then not at the point at which they don't offer to pay them, because I think you're shortchanging if you're going to do a paid strategy, your paid strategy in terms of how you're going to approach that and how you're going to get the most out of it. I think they're separate channels to go down, and I genuinely think that you shouldn't be going down paid route unless you've got a good enough budget to spread the risk around a little bit. If you've only got a few £1,000s, you shouldn't put that whole pot into one influencer to play your game and get paid for it. It's too big a risk. I'd put that money in having a really good community manager who spends a lot of time reaching out to lots of different channels and realises that the hit rate might be small. Lots of them do not read their emails. I spent time reading every single email that came into Yogscast. And most of them are terrible. That's why people don't read them. It's not that they're rude or you know, they haven't got the time for it, really. It's just they get sent a shitload of just terrible emails. And so it's not worth anyone's time going through all that kind of stuff. So email is a tricky way to do it.
Hi, so within the paid content world of this, are there different ways that you guys get paid, or is it generally speaking a specific business model? I know you were talking about performance marketing, this being a sort of a different mindset, but do you sometimes agree to get involved on a kind of per action type basis, or is it always like some sort of flat fee, upfront kind of situation?
From our point of view, it's almost always a flat fee. Sometimes an agency will take some of that risk, but from a creator point of view, they're doing the same. They're doing the same activity. They're taking the same risk. They're taking the same amount of time to create the content. So they need to get paid the flat fee for it. Sometimes an agency will take some risk and will do it on a performance base. But really, our point of view is pretty similar in that we're spending the time doing the work, and so it'll be a flat fee generally.
I mean, mostly we're also working on a flat fee basis. We have had actually some influencers, if they really like a game, again, and if they're really involved, and if they really think the game will monetize well, etc., agree to work on a CPA, so cost per action, but that is really dependent on the influencer, because obviously they will invest the time to do their video, and obviously they need proper return on that, right? So if an influencer takes the time to play your game, to produce great content, then it's their job and it's fair to compensate them, like, just for the effort itself. And then if they know if they have the security, they usually also make great content out of that, I would say.
And is there a relative range of what that flat fee can be? I mean, is it very widely ranging, or is it sort of within a typical tight window?
Yeah, I mean, hugely ranging from channel to channel, from game to game. You know, if you've got a particular type of game, if I'm feeling like that's a bigger risk for me, you know, I like the game, but I don't know if my audience will, you know, I'm happy to say it's a good game, I enjoy it, but is it going to make good content? Am I going to miss out on a load of views? Is it going to hurt my next 4 videos because people haven't tuned in again because of YouTube algorithms, etc.? Then that might be somewhere where, you know, I'm not going to take that risk unless it feels like less of a financial risk. And obviously then other channels, it may not be a risk because it may be right in their wheelhouse. That's the sort of stuff that they love. In fact, they'd be delighted to do it, and they would be cheaper. So it's going to vary depending on your product and the people.
That's actually a bit of a problem, because many publishers approach us and want to know, okay, what I've seen you work with influencer X, what does he cost? Like, can you name me the price or something like that? But prices for influencer are very, very individual. So that's always something we don't do. We're not saying, okay, these are our influencers and these are their prices for content, because that's not how it works, right? Influencers sometimes may not want to do something with your game at all because they don't think it's a great fit. On the other hand, if we see a great fit on the influencer side, they might actually do it for a very, very reasonable price. So things vary a lot. You have to look at, again, the individual influencer and the individual game. So that's why we actually don't like go out there and say, okay, these are influencers, these are the prices.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Can I have a round of applause for these 3 gents?